In this lesson, we're going to revisit the idea of references. During your work so far, you've declared many object reference variables. Let me give you an example. One class that we have looked at over and over is the Jabberwock class. The details are here. You don't have to write this down. You're pretty familiar with this. We have a constructor for the Jabberwock. When we first instantiated Jabberwock, they're orange, male, and they're hungry. We have a show attributes method and a color change. We'll get back to that. So I'm going to run a test program I have. You'll see I have a main method. I'm instantiating two Jabberwock objects, and I'm just going to say system out print line. Now you know in the Jabberwock class, in the one I just showed you, we don't have a toString method. So, well, let's just see what happens. You can ignore this commented outlines. I'll get back to that. But let's just run this program as it is and see what happens. You notice I get kind of an odd output here. Jabberwock FI, that's the name of the class. I have an @ symbol, and then I have a string of characters. What I would like you to do is to think of these as a memory address. And this is a visual that I'd like you to think about. What we just did was create two Jabberwock objects, one called J and one called H. But you'll notice when I said system out print line, I got, well, some information that was kind of odd. I'll come back to this picture in a second. What we did was, if you assign an object to a variable the way we just did, the variable is actually assigned to a reference to the object, not the object itself. Now that can be a little complicated. Let's see that in a different way. The memory location associated with a reference type of variable, in other words, one of the H or J that Jabberwocks that I just instantiated, it contains an address, we're going to call it a pointer, that indicates the memory location of the actual object. One way of visualizing a reference is as a memory address. You can think of a reference as being the numerical address of the region in memory where the object is held. So in other words, these two boxes, and I draw these very often to keep objects straight, there are two memory locations. These are the addresses of the two memory locations. These are the two object reference variables, J and H. Now they're very, very, very similar, identical in fact. We'll get back to that too. But this is how I'd like you to think of object references. Let's go a little farther with this idea. I'm going to bring up my program again. In the Jabberwock test class, I'm going to take one of these lines I just commented out and put it back in. Now if these were primitive variables, you know that basically H is going to take on the value of J. It's an assignment operator. So if I were to take these two lines, actually I don't have to, I have them right here, don't I? There we go. So let's instantiate these objects. Let's print out their memory locations. Let's perform this operation, and then let's do the same thing again. Let's compile this, no problems, and let's run it again. Now notice when I first created these two objects, they had two different memory locations. Now they have identical memory locations. What just happened is I just gave this memory location two different object variable two different object reference variables, J and H. This is its memory location, but I gave it two object reference variables. You'll notice that there's only ever one unique copy of an object, though there could be several references to it. We're going to talk about the equality operator in just a second, but please check this note. Two or more references, H and J a minute ago, two or more references that refer to the same object are called aliases of each other. In other words, they refer to the same object. I would like you to think of it this way. They refer to the same memory location. Let's see if I can demonstrate that a different way. This time I'm going to comment out these two lines. I'm going to keep this one, but I'm going to add one. Instantiate two objects, tell me where they are, then run this assignment operator, and then tell me the equality operator. What is this going to output? Before I do that, I think I'll comment out this line first. Right now, let's instantiate them, find out where they are, and find out if they're equal. Good. And let's run my test. One is in one memory location, the other's in the other memory location. So the picture right now is this one. One is here, J is here, H is here. Alright, let's run that again. But this time, let's put this line back in. Take a look. Alright, what's the output going to be this time? Compile this, run it again. You know what? This is the old output, the other memory locations. I think I'd like to change this just a little bit. Yeah, I think I'd like to do this. I'm going to copy these lines, and after this line, I want to print the memory locations of J and H again. Let's see if this changes anything. Compile this and run it. Before they had two different memory locations. Now they have the same memory location. And when I'm asked if they're equal, they are. But something that's going to be a little different now. They're not equal in value. This should have come up true if they were just testing to see if they're equal in value. They're not. They are referring to the same memory location. They're referring to the same object. In other words, the equality operator tests whether the two references are equal. That is, whether they refer to the very same object. And as I mentioned before, now H and J are aliases of each other. If this all seems pretty easy so far, that's great. Let's try something else. What if I should take my program now, my driver, and I'm going to add a couple more lines here. I'm going to instantiate two Jabberwocks, J and H. I'm going to print out their memory locations. Then I'm going to instantiate another one. And the object reference variable I'm going to use is H again. Then I'm going to ask where the memory locations are now. So remember, we're going to get 4 memory locations. Now, J and J should be the same. H and H should be the same. Let's find out. And run this. Notice my first one and my third one exactly the same. But this time the H object reference variable refers to this memory location, and now it's referring to a different one. The picture I'd like you to get is this. But after we added those other two lines, basically what we did was we have a third object at a third memory location that's identical, it seems, to the other ones, except that its variable, its object reference variable, is H. These two different memory locations, different objects, they just both happen to have the same object reference variables.